Hello. How's everybody doing? Perfect. My name's John Pingel. I host the hashtag show wrestling show, facebook.com/THS Wrestling News. We stream every Sunday, and we're going to talk about the great sport of professional wrestling today. So I will let the panelists introduce themselves, and we will go down the line here. Jimmy.
I am Jim Velasco from Masked Mats and Mayhem. We were primarily a Lucha Underground podcast, but that has since gone by the wayside. But we have talked about WWE and MMA and pop culture and all that kind of stuff. We are working on probably one of our next biggest guests after we've had like Killer Cross and Marty the Moth and a lot of the Lucha Underground talent. We're hoping, fingers crossed, for Sid. We'll see if that happens.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like this,
like Sid.
like Psycho Sid Vicious Justice.
Dude, if I didn't play softball, he'd show up.
Yes,
Right?
he'll show up if softball's involved, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Man, that's dope.
Hey guys, how y'all doing? I'm Jonathan Bowles, JB, J Bowles, and I run Lapel Yeah. And thank you.
You gotta say it the way Zack Ryder says it.
Yeah.
Oh, lapel, yeah.
Yeah. And I've started a couple of little wrestling ventures, Wrestle Ruse, Wrestle Crate, but Lapel Yeah is the one that grew wings and flew away. So happy to be here with all y'all.
Yeah. We're sharing out. All right.
Hi, I'm an average black dude that does dope shit. I'm Jay Washington, host on Collider Video, one of the hosts of the Wrestling Positive Slamcast, also a pro wrestler for the past 20 years. Wrestled under the Urban Gladiator, Jay Washington. Been all across the country, all that good shit. A lot of friends currently in all of the major promotions. I just got back in the ring after like a 5-year absence. Stand up and acting happened. So for the past like 6 months, I've been back working, and it's been back fun. And I've actually been getting cussed out by a bunch of friends in the E for getting back in the ring, who told me, literally, you got out. Why did you get back in? And I was like, I hate y'all, because I want to do this. So yeah, so I've been doing this for 20 years. So yeah, that's me.
I guess it's another black man that does dope shit. My name is Neesin. I am one of the hosts of that hashtag show wrestling, and also a director, musician, rapper, producer, and all the things above. Man, I love pro wrestling, and I know you guys do too. I don't like you, Shinsuke. I don't like you. What you did to Kofi is a terrible, terrible traffic. I can't talk right now. It's terrible. I'm no speaking English. I missed that gimmick. But yes, I'm happy. We're gonna talk some pro wrestling, man. We're gonna have some fun today. Y'all ready to have some fun? See, there it goes.
What's up, everybody? My name is Johnny Parker, a.k.a. Johnny Dope Kicks. I'm also a host of THS Wrestling. I'm also a comic book writer down in Artist Alley selling Blackness and Brown Hand, The Black Man's Got to Get Pulled Over, Broken, Die Cute, and a lot of other amazingness. So if you get a chance, stop on by, come pay me a visit.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Brandon Easton. I'm a television writer, screenwriter. I previously worked on Marvel's Agent Carter, Season 2. I've done the Black Panther animated series, a bunch of Transformers shows. I'm also a graphic novelist. I grew up in Baltimore, so back in the 80s, so I was at the tail end of the territory era. So a lot of what I'm seeing nowadays is actually a very good thing, because I got to see Jim Crockett Promotions version of NWA, as well as WWF, UWF, World Class, and AWA all at the same time. So that was a really cool time. Luckily, in my graphic novel career, I've gotten to work with Andre the Giant, Andre Rusimov's family, to do the Andre the Giant Closer to Heaven graphic novel, as well as I've worked with Jim Cornette on Behind the Curtain, which is a collection of all of his stories that we put into the graphic novel format. So if you listen to the Jim Cornette podcast, and every now and then he complains about how he had to send out a bunch of books, this is the book that he had to send out, which actually sold out on Amazon. So we're very, very happy about that.
Okay, I have a question for the audience. Show of hands of who was the only kid in school that watched professional wrestling. I guess that's pretty good. So question for the panel. Do you guys think like when we were growing up and watching wrestling and being the only kid in school, I guess just me and a couple of other people who would watch wrestling, did you ever think that in 2019 we would have access to so much wrestling and it would be super cool to be a wrestling fan? I think it's super cool. Do you guys think it's super cool to be
I think it
wrestling
is.
fan?
I honestly do. I don't think nobody expected the internet to be what it is, so nobody expected the level of content that we get. But I think if you were a wrestling fan, you just knew this was always going to be around because, again, like you said, Brandon, it was territories at first. So from territories to giant promotions, you kind of just knew it was going to grow. You didn't know to what extent it was going to grow. You just knew it was going to grow. And being one of the guys now, to see that you have so many opportunities to work and so many places to go to, you don't just have to have the WWE be your end-all, be-all stop. You can now have AEW. If you really want to go that way, you can go to Impact. You can do... No, hold on.
Punching down.
I have, like I said, I got a bunch of friends who are on the Impact roster. Congratulations to them. And don't get me wrong, if they called me right now, I'd be the fuck on TV. But, however, I know what the product is, okay? And I can say that because I was in a Spike Lee joint that everybody hated. So I know how that goes. I'm in Chirac. You goddamn right. I play Wesley Snipes' right-hand man. Who? That's my home. That's my sister. We'll talk. So, but at the same time, you never thought, like I said, there's so many options. Impact, ROH, Master P just bought House of Glory, who I'm shooting my shot at currently.
Yeah.
Booker has his own promotion. There's so much you can do. That's just in the States. You can still go overseas to Japan and do New Japan. You can do New Japan in the States. You can still do the European tour and things like that. So there's so much for wrestling, and the fact that wrestling has permeated pop culture speaks volumes. Like, it used to be that it was always in pop culture, but the fact now that they make sure, the WWE lets you know how big their social is, that it tops even other professional sports organizations. The fact that it permeates off these #1 shows from these broadcast networks every week. So, like, yeah, it's a great thing. And again, if anybody from Impact is watching, you know what I'm saying?
They were doing media yesterday.
I know. I didn't get a chance to because I live out in Van Nuys, and so I was dealing with all that smoke and potentially losing my crib. So I was like, do I want to talk to Sami Callihan, who I was married to in IWA Mid-South for 6 months? Nah, I'm good. Like, I know.
Did you see him walking around yesterday?
No, I wasn't here yesterday. I had to work my other job, because pro wrestling on the indies don't pay shit, okay? And I'm looking straight at the camera to tell you that. But no, like, people. Like, you get to know them. So it's like, what do you ask them about shit you already know? Like, what do I ask Taya when I've hung out with her and John? What do I ask Brian's big ass? I don't know. What do I tell Sammy? We need to get you back on the diet. Like, what do I tell... But Sammy's the homie, so it's like, what do you say and shit like that?
Thumbs down to diet?
Yeah, continue. Now, who else you want to talk about? Who else?
Oh, you need me to go down the
No,
list?
I'm playing.
I have a list of people I can talk shit about because I'm friends with them, and I'll text them and be like, I just got done talking shit about you.
I mean, the trick is, I think that up to 2001, I would have felt like you did, but in 2001, we saw the end of a lot of things at one time. Like WCW died, FMW in Japan, which Hayabusa, after he broke his neck, and then ECW, the real ECW died. So there was a point when I looked at the landscape and saw it was WWE dominated, and I was fully disgusted. Because even New Japan at the time was dying, right before Tanahashi, rose to prominence. So I'm happy that we're where we are today, because there's wrestling on literally every single day somewhere in the country, on some channel. And I can't think of a time since the territory era that it's been this incredible. So I'm very happy, but I don't remember it being cool, because there was a lot of cats in my school who was into it, but we were kind of like the comic book kids. It was like, because it was the same group. It was the comic book cats and the wrestling cats, and there was a concentric circle there. So I think there's something to the fact that the comic book world and the wrestling world kind of mash into each other. I think, at least.
Also, to add to that, I think wrestling has always been a part of pop culture as far as music, but I think now, with hip-hop being the #1 genre the first time and ever, like the last year, hip-hop was literally the #1 genre, and hip-hop being so embedded in wrestling culture, that had a lot to do with it. So you see You see songs like Ric Flair made by the Migos. You see the Migos on SmackDown. You see Wale coming out with the Street Profits. And you see Wale's album. Like these are marketing strategies and moves that happen behind the scenes that are really shows the power of what wrestling is today. And as these other companies continue to grow and make their stake and not take away from what, you know, WWE is the flagship, but you have AEW, which is a real alternative that's going to come in, and you're going to see those musical acts and movie acts crossover in there. And I think that's what makes it cool now, because I think you can't go anywhere without hearing a Migo record. And so you can't go anywhere now without seeing an AEW. Go down Sunset. You see a big AEW billboard. So those things are making it acceptable and talk about it more than just water cooler talk with me and my friend. It's more like, no, I was just watching, you know, college football and I saw Roman Reigns on. Like, he seems like a pretty dope dude. Let me watch this on Friday night. And Roman Reigns is dope, guys. Don't do that. He's dope. He's dope. We can have a conversation, okay? Him and Sasha Banks, guys.
Well, when it go to Roman, I give him that off the match he had with Buddy Murphy.
Thank you. Daniel Bryan, 2017? No?
Yeah.
Thank you. You said what? The Shield versus Wyatt. Name a bad Roman Reigns match.
Oh no.
The Shield versus the what? Name a bad Roman Reigns match.
We only have an hour. We only have an hour.
No, the Shield versus the Wyatts. Now I get it. Roman Reigns plays his role, but also you had John Moxley, because I refuse to fucking call him Dean Ambrose, and you had Tyler Black, who I fucking refuse to call Seth Rollins, because I grew up with them. I came up with them. Kobe Lopez and Jonathan. Yeah, I wouldn't do all that, but no. The thing is, you have those wrestlers, and like you said, I agree with you on that. So yeah, I just wanted to throw the Roman Reigns.
But to go back to it, like wrestling becoming cool now, I would say that WWE's been a lot smarter as well, because they're starting to target like their female audience as well. You see that with like the E-shows they're putting out with like WWE Divas. You see that also with the Bellas and also with Ricochet. Like, it was informed to us that like they noticed that
Sasha Banks.
They noticed that Ricochet tested really well with like female audiences, and so guess what? Ricochet got a huge push, and now they're trying to protect him and push him forward. So I would say like the WWE is trying to get cooler, and they're trying to put themselves out there, but every day they're growing and starting to get better.
You said Ricochet tests well with the female audience?
Yeah.
Ladies, do you guys like Ricochet? Wow.
Whoa.
Well, also he decided to cash out. So that's another thing people forget. Like Shinsuke, AJ, Finn, the Good Brothers, Kevin, Sammy, all these cats, we'd be like, man, they go to the WWE and they get wasted. Like, no, they don't. They all are cool where they are, because those paychecks speak volumes. Everybody's like, oh, well, Finn was getting buried. Shinsuke's getting buried. Shinsuke does not have to work as hard as he did in New Japan Wrestling ever. Do you think Shinsuke Nakamura cares what the internet says?
Shinsuke, do you care what the internet says?
You're right.
Wow.
You're right. But you care about Kofi Kingston. But you get what I'm saying? Like those guys who've busted their asses for 15 plus years in every other company before the Fed, they go there now and they're getting. Yeah, it's nice when you can get these titles. It's nice when you get these pushes. But at the same time, you've made your bank account more than you would have ever imagined it being. People have been talking about how AJ Styles has been buried pretty much for the last year. Do you think AJ Styles cares? All AJ needs to do is do a good match every now and then and tattoo another kid's birthday on his ribcage.
Shoot week.
What are their initials? AJ? Okay.
All 4 or 5 of them.
There's a lot of them. John, I had a question for you, if you wanted to. Take the microphone. Me? Yes, you. So with geek culture, a lot of nostalgia comes about, and you guys released a shirt that drove not only me, but I think the rest of the internet insane. It is this WCW crew shirt.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I bought one.
Can you just talk about? It's right here.
Turn around. Start making it back in the ring. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about, how you came up with this idea, and were you surprised that it was as huge as it was?
Yeah. First of all, it wasn't my idea.
My bad.
So I surround myself with really good people that are way into the dark shadows and the dark corners of wrestling history and whatnot. I had no idea that shirt existed, and so these two guys that work for me that do a lot of the artwork, we were trying to come up with something for San Diego Comic-Con, and they just surfing around the internet, they found a random picture of an orange crew shirt, and they sent me the picture, and I was like, that shirt's really, really ugly. It's awful. And they're like, but I think, we could remake this. And so one of the things that's really, really hot right now, especially in wrestling, is the old shirts. It's the vintage and vintage stuff, and, finding those things that you used to have when you were a kid that maybe you tossed, and then you found it again on wrestlingforsale.com for $300. But now you're like 30-something years old, and you've got the money to spend on stuff like that, and you can kind of relive your childhood and stuff like that. But so I threw the idea out to a couple people. They're like, yeah, man, Disney's pretty hot right now. And I said, okay.
Was that a revelation?
Right? They're going somewhere. It's on the rise. So I said, sure, let's do it. So we did a run of them specifically for San Diego Comic-Con, but when we posted up the teaser of, hey, this is what we'll have in San Diego, it just blew up, like exponentially more than anything we'd ever done before. If I held one for the people that asked me to hold one, we would have sold 5 times what we made for that initial run already. And so I knew that, okay, we're on to something here. It lasted 3 hours on the first day of San Diego Comic-Con, sold them out. So then, and what I'm good at is I'm good at hype. I'm good at making things seem like they're really, really awesome when maybe it wasn't that awesome. We only made 50 of them at San Diego Comic-Con, so it's not.
I gave you so much shit for that when I got my shirt.
I know, right? And so, but I had no idea. And so, good. And so then we posted them online and sold a ton of them, like 5 times more than any shirt we had ever sold before. And then when everybody got them and started posting them, then it's like, oh, hey, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? And so you get the second wave, and so we did it again. We added some different things. But yeah, it was, a couple of guys that are really, really into wrestling surfing around on the internet, and we remade it and did the best we could to recreate it, and there you go. It became super hot, and I still at least once or twice a day get somebody on Instagram, hey, are there any more of these? Are there any more of these? And I tell them to email Danny, and they do, and sometimes you get one and sometimes you don't. But those shirts are lost and gone forever. But yeah, it went really well. But I had no idea. How hot it would be. And so, we're going to try to keep that going. What's next?
I don't know. What is next? What would you want to put out next, WCW-wise?
Okay, how about this? A little test channel.
Oh.
Okay. Y'all like the Rock and Roll Express? Yeah. Okay, see, not a huge pop for the Rock and Roll Express. But one of the things, back in the day, they used to wear the shirt that says, we want you for the Rock and Roll Army. And so instead of just selling a t-shirt, what I want to do is I want to sell a $35 membership to be a part of the Rock and Roll Army, which would include the t-shirt, an exclusive enamel pin, and then we'd actually do like a print newsletter that would have like an interview with them that's brand new, something like that. Make it like a fan club thing, Rock and Roll Army, sell it for $35. You get like 5 or 6 things all in one time. So I think that's what we're doing next.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that an exclusive?
Yeah, nobody's heard that yet.
Yes.
You're here first.
So the topic is pro wrestling and geek culture, which is a very broad term, I think. It's like the broadest of all terms. So where do you guys think, outside of maybe the television product for everything that's on television, what do you think wrestling, where does the biggest impact it has? Be video games or?
Comic books.
Why is that, sir?
Because you watch many wrestlers do comic book inspired gear. Rey Mysterio started it every year. Seth Rollins just did Daredevil. He did the Phantom and all of them. You just saw Seth Rollins do the Avengers Quantum Suit before the movie even came out.
Yeah.
And then now comic books, they'll emulate it. Remember, the first Blade, no, it was the second Blade, the first one had him do a standing vertical suplex. So you integrate it consistently in different things. So I think comic books, because those are becoming very, very popular, and those are mainstream culture now, that's the next best place for it to go. But like you were saying earlier, hip-hop and everything, let's not forget Master P in the 90s. No Limit in WCW.
Big Swole.
All them. So before he was even going in the House of Glory. So like rap has always been through it, so it's just, It's just evolution into every different thing. Pro wrestling is becoming part of every other pop culture element. Excuse me. I am sleepy. I am sorry.
It's okay.
I've had 4 hours of sleep.
Actually, I had a follow-up question for you. Sorry. You worked for Chikara, correct?
Yes.
And that is basically the most comic booky promotion of all time.
It is so, you know what, Mike Quackenbush came up with something that was interesting because it was, you know, you have wrestling everywhere. Philly has wrestling. And how do you spice it up? You take something that Philly wouldn't be used to and you add the lucha libre elements, but you do it in such a wild way. The Colony is the greatest thing I think I've ever seen. Round of applause if you've ever seen Chikara Pro. If you've ever seen the Colony, it's a bunch of dudes dressed like ants. And the thing is, there is no stopping of ants. There's black ant, white ant, red ant, green ant, yellow ant, soldier ant. It's a whole bunch of ants. You have a dude, if anybody's familiar with Delirious spawned off Hollow Wicked and Frightmare. You have Ultramantis Black. You have Crossbones. You have all these different type of characters. The ice cream dudes. It's just so much. I had the pleasure of being as a part of the Soul Touchers, which was great to do the Soldier Boy to come out too.
Yes, it's one of the best entrances.
But it's something interesting because it was unique. It was something you did. Like you can watch a pro wrestling promotion and be like, all right, this is wrestling. This is just wrestling. But when you watch Chikara, it was like you see these guys in these crazy costumes doing stuff you would never imagine them to do, and the stories work.
Perfect, thank you. The panel is over. No, I'm just kidding. Did anyone else have any follow-up to where do you think, outside of the television product, wrestling would be the biggest? Video games?
I think what
Comics.
helped, and this is not because I'm sad about Kofi, but Kofi, the video game, what Xavier's doing, but Kofi, what he's doing with Kicks. And Kicks shoes, shout out to Dope Kicks, is a big thing. Like, it's a big culture outside of it. It has its own element. So what Kofi is wearing, these exclusive shoes when he's wrestling. He's either wearing the $350 tie-up shoes off the phone, the Nike joints, or he's wearing the Kyrie's that are $200 and something, and sneakerheads are catching this. Like, sneakerheads are like, yo, he got those before those come out. How did he get those? And then it's a thing of, what is this? Wrestling? Are they wrestling in $500 shoes? And so I feel like those little things about pop culture that draw, you know, what's the quickest destination is between two points, right? And so these things are drawing everything into wrestling, which is blowing up and making of this $1 billion industry even more of a bit, even, you know, $2 billion, $3 billion is becoming. It's not just sport. It's not just entertainment. It is sports and entertainment because of everything that's connected to it. So I find that shoes is, to me, that was like the thing that really took me back in the last recent years. I'm like, wow, like I'm a Kicks person. Kofi wears Kicks, and then, you know, you see all these other people, the Street Profits, and I'm Carmella. Champs deals, Enzo Amore, Foot Locker deal. Like, WWE has a Foot Locker deal. Do y'all understand how crazy that is? Like 10 years ago, we would never have thought any wrestling company will be selling products out of WWE, out of Foot Locker, and they have Pops in Foot Locker of Becky Lynch. That's amazing.
To piggyback, I'd also say the other place that's blowing up is video games. Like Xavier Woods' YouTube channel has over 1 million subscribers, and again, like a lot of the guys in WWE and the girls are hardcore gamers. Like AJ flies around with his own personal gaming system that he sets up on planes. Got stolen, sadly. But the thing about it is that like he has a great time. He loves talking about games. A lot of those people come on this channel, they're huge game fans as well. So you're starting to see this with like WWE 2K19, 2K20, like all the stuff they're starting to expand into. Like video games, which is also sports entertainment, is another huge market that they're starting to expand into. Like literally, when they announced that they were doing AEW, Kenny Omega said, "Oh yeah, and we're also making a video game. Like it's in development." And so those two things are starting to go hand in hand.
Brandon, I had a question for you. We met down at the Artist Alley, and I would love to hear a Jim Cornette story.
Jesus Christ.
If you got sensitive ears, you might want to cover them because if it's a Cornette story, it's going to get raw.
The thing with him is that, like, when you talk to him straight up one-on-one and he thinks that you're from his generation or you're from his mindset, he's a lot calmer. If I'd have came off as a Trump supporter or somebody who thinks WWE is the only wrestling company in the world, we wouldn't have gotten along. But, I mean, yeah, he curses every other word. Like, you have to figure out what he's actually saying half the time. But when you, like, take every other word and you reassemble them, you figure out, oh, he's actually saying something coherent. So, I mean, I don't have a single story. It's just the experience of Jim Cornette. You don't meet him, you experience him. You know, and we had many phone conversations as we were doing this book. But, I mean, the thing that really hit me with him was his encyclopedic knowledge of the smallest things in wrestling. Like, I thought I knew. And then he told me about, you know, Sputnik Monroe desegregating southern arenas because of pro wrestling. Like, pro wrestling is part of the civil rights movement. Very few people are aware of that. Like, I didn't even know that. You know, not to say that they were necessarily the most liberal or lefty people, but they saw the money, sort of like the dude who brought Jackie Robinson into MLB. You know, it wasn't about, oh, I love black folk. No, it was about, well, black people spend money. So the trick was, like, he was just sitting there dropping mad knowledge on me. You know, like, I was just sitting there, Jesus Christ. Like, I was like, what? He was like, oh, yeah, remember. Like I said, I don't know what the hell he's talking about half the time. But he was like, yeah, you know, I'm about Nick Monroe. And then we did the screw job, you know, because that's in the book, too. And he tells the whole, according to Jim, you know,
Right.
he gave Vince McMahon the idea for screwing Brett out of the WWF title at the time based on the original screw job way back in the day. So it was just the experience of learning from that man, just all this minuscule stuff. Like, I didn't know about the syndication wars of the 80s, because being in Baltimore, I had access to things like the World Class Championship Wrestling. That was based out of Dallas, right? The Von Erichs. I was never going from Baltimore to Dallas in my life,
Right.
but for somehow they sold that syndication package to the Baltimore, Washington, Maryland area. You know what I'm saying? So I got a chance, like, teaching me about the syndication wars helped me to understand how things are going on now. You know, with even people like MLW or I don't know what Ring of Honor is going to do, but, you know.
Please, if someone knows what Ring of Honor is going to do.
Ring of Honor don't know what Ring of Honor is going to do.
But bottom line is that Jim Cornette schooled me on things that I thought I knew, and he opened my eyes to a whole other level. So I experienced that, man, you know, pretty much. That's the best way to explain it.
So we talked about earlier, there's basically wrestling on every single day. And it is, for me personally, quite exhausting to try to keep up with everything. Jimmy, you do a podcast, and you just said, you know, you do Lucha Underground. How do you keep your podcast unique from other? Because quite frankly, there's a lot of WWE ones. There's a lot of, well, coming up there will be a lot of AEW ones. What do you do to keep your podcast unique and special?
Well, one of the things we did was that most people just get talent to come aboard and do interviews and whatnot, but we actually got like the producers and the writers of the show, which I feel like not many podcasts do that. So we would go out of our way to, you know, try to get these people to come on the show to explain more of the storylines or explain, especially with Lucha Underground, which it's not a wrestling promotion, it's a television show. So we came at it like, okay, well, how are you dealing with the network? How are you dealing with distribution and whatnot? So that's when we initially started, that's how we tried to separate ourselves from everyone else. We still did talk about WWE and indie promotions and whatnot and New Japan, but we knew that in order to make ourselves different, we had to get other people that wouldn't appear elsewhere. So a lot of like quote unquote exclusives came from us because the producers would come on, they knew they could trust us with asking the right questions and in some cases asking the wrong questions, as in the ones that maybe they don't want to answer because the network isn't giving them the proper answer.
Perfect. I'm going to take those notes and make my own podcast now. And
Okay, we all know you're really Conrad with 15 podcasts, John.
no, I'm not.
You
I'm
have
not Conrad Thompson.
You
How's
really,
Arn?
That's a good podcast. I like it. Yeah, it's a very good podcast. It's a great listen. But we want to hear what you guys have to say. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to get up, I guess.
Oh, yeah. In the meantime, I would just like to, while he walks over there, talk about Sasha Banks. Okay, my time's up. Sorry.
Oh,
All right,
All
so
right.
my question.
I'm
my
already-
my name is Daniel, by the way.
Hi, Daniel.
I want to know what's your opinion on hardcore wrestling / deathmatch wrestling in general. I mean, for me personally, I grew up watching it, and I thought that was the best shit ever. And like, I just want to know what's your opinion on it.
I'll jump in here since I have a very close working relationship with GCW. You guys like GCW?
You see, Dub?
Game changer? No, not yet. Got to get on it. Got to get on it.
Sold out so quick.
Yeah, let me say this. I was not a fan of the blood and guts, deathmatch style wrestling, really at all. Mostly because when you think about it, you're mostly just exposed to that. You're seeing the worst clips. You're seeing like the worst of the worst. And that was really all I ever saw was like, oh man, I don't know if I'd ever want to watch that. Somebody, you know, just with the light tubes and the barbed wire and the fire and the this and the that and everything. And after getting involved with GCW, we make all their merch for them. We run gcwmerch.com and getting to know some of those guys and actually going to some of the shows. It's not my favorite thing, but I understand it a little bit more. And I at first thought it was, it's just all about the stunts. It's all about how hardcore they can go and how over the top and what can they light on fire next and what weapon are they going to use and who's going to get carried out in a body bag. But some of those guys are absolutely great wrestlers. And they've been doing it for a very, very long time. And honestly, they're some of the like sweetest dudes ever. Nick Gage is another guy that like he's probably
Super good dude.
one of the most over wrestlers on the planet right now. And if you haven't checked out Game Changer Wrestling, I would highly recommend it. And it's not all just deathmatch stuff. Usually there's only like 1 or 2 of those on every show, and it's not that bad. But yeah, I was not a fan at all, but now I'm a little bit more deathmatch friendly. I don't mind it. I like it.
Having worked IWA Mid-South before everything went batshit crazy, I got to see a lot of that. And like when I saw when Devin Fury and Necro Butcher and all of them were brought in, and when Ian Rotten wanted to do all these crazy things, and they be like, yo, did you want to do that? And I was like, no. Like, not my mama's son. Because, like, first of all, I'm not, no. Like, no. Because I respect all the guys who do it, because if you do it, you are committing to that. And I have this thing about I don't even like my own blood on me sometimes. So, like I've done street fights. I did a street fight where the guy basically sliced his own hand open. And I didn't know it until it was on the back of the shirt that I had, and the shirt was wet. And I was like, I'm not sweating. What is going on? And this was 2 minutes into the match. So I couldn't do that. But again, like street fight, whatever, but just specific, and we finna set up light tubes and barbed wire and thumbtacks. There's this thing called I want to keep my face the best way it can be. And I just can't. I respect everybody who does it. Like, people know about the whole blatant. I could never gig. I always tell people this, if you bust me open the hard way, that is one thing. But for me to sit there and go, all right, here we go. Nope. Nope. Never would do that. So it's to each his own.
Yeah, I have to agree because I grew up in the Philly area, so I was very much brought up by ECW. And in the wake of ECW, CZW came up. And
Moxley.
Yep.
Sammy.
Exactly. So I would go to CZW shows at the Champ Sports Arena in my hometown, and I would see guys like Wife Beater and Rick Blade and Nick Mondo practically kill themselves, and back then I loved it. But I know for me personally, these days, I respect it. To what JB said, there's a lot of talent behind it, despite what may be seen on clips and whatnot. But I feel like, just like how wrestling's evolved, I feel like people's taste with wrestling will evolve as well. So as much as like I can stomach a crazy death match like that, back then I loved it. Now I'm very, very like low-key about watching them now.
Let me ask you, have you ever seen Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard I Quit match?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
The reason why I bring that up is because if you have a deathmatch scenario that's a payoff to a real story where it's an actual blood feud, I think they work extremely well. But then again, I've also seen Onita in Japan, and I've seen piranha matches and exploding landmine matches and people going through fluorescent light bulbs. I was just like, and then one, I'm not even going to get into what I've seen, but I've seen some things that I'm like, is this wrestling or is this a snuff film? There comes a point when I feel like, and I'm not going to quote George Lucas, but there's a thing about a special effect being in service of a story instead of the story being about special effects. I think that a death match can be in service of a wrestling angle. You know, like a Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell. No.
Don't bring that up right now. Don't do that.
We're not talking about Hell in a Cell.
Like, but the Bad Blood pay-per-view with Shawn and Undertaker, all that stuff, like that was in service of it because you couldn't have another regular match. Having death matches for the sake of death matches starts to become extremely boring. It's like watching a movie with like a CGI fest. If there's no story, you just got the Spawn movie from 98 or whatever it was. You know what I mean?
Wow. Wow. Cut his mic off.
But also, you do have, and now the problem is too, you have a lot of these new guys trying to get in death matches.
It can't work.
And they cannot work at all. So all they want to do is this, let's do this little gritty stuff. And the problem is, if you aren't a good worker trying to do this, you are going to kill each other. That is why you have so many people having to have these major surgeries. You got muscles being torn, tendons being ripped out because they can't work and they just want to say, all right, well, I got these 8 planks full of barbed wire stacked up. Yo, you can't even do the basics. You can't chain wrestle. You can't tell a story in the ring. So why would you want to go? Ring psychology is the one thing I preach so much because I was trained on that. It was beat the hell in me during my training. Like, you have to tell a story. These cats don't do that. I'm sorry. They just, take that mic. Take that.
Hey, Daniel, for getting everyone all riled up, I got a autograph here for you. Come and pick it up. You got the natural. We got the natural Dustin Rhodes.
Oh, it's Dustin.
The natural.
Wow. Nice. How about that?
Natural, sir. Yeah.
Anybody else got any? Just raise your hands. We have a microphone coming around.
Oh.
Hey guys, just want to ask, go down the line and give your, I guess, most underrated or under the radar, wrestler that you've seen recently or your favorite, I guess, and don't say Sasha Banks.
Come on, man. You know I'm going to say Sasha Banks. She can't get enough credit. Like truly.
I'd say Hiroki Goto in New Japan. That guy's incredible. And he just hasn't been able to crack to the lower upper mid card. But when he does, he's going to be on fire.
Is everybody having to think about it? Oh, no.
No, I know exactly who. Jake Atlas.
Yeah.
100%. I sat down, had a little coffee with him back in January of this year. I said, bro, this is your year. It's going to happen. This is it. Jake Atlas, 100%. Everybody's going to know who that dude is in the next 6 months.
Just because this guy's killed it the last couple PWG shows, I'm just going to say Black Taurus.
Yeah.
This dude rocked it.
So good.
He was part of this 6-man match at PWG 2 shows ago before Bola. And oh my God, he completely sold me in that one match. I mean, that was the match of the night. Probably, for me, one of the matches of the year.
100%.
Crazy. This dude is unbelievable for a guy's size. Him and Caveman Ugg, too, facing each other. Bola. Unbelievable.
That was a great match.
Unbelievable. So I'm going to go Black Taurus.
Do you got...
Yeah, so I trained for a little bit at Santino Bros, and I trained with Brody King. And, yeah, he gave me the sickest chop of my life, and I'll never forget that. And so seeing what he's, being in the same just facility as him and seeing what he's doing now is an amazing thing. Eli Everfly as well came from that camp as well, and now seeing him on PWG, seeing him in, he was on SmackDown or whatever as well. So just those two guys come to mind. Everybody else is already signed, and I consider if you on the roster, then, look.
Sasha Banks.
Exactly.
I thought about mine when you said chops, and for me, it's my little brother, Marshe Rocket.
Yeah.
Marshe Rocket was on the Impact roster, and he literally told them let him go because they didn't have anything for him. And Marshe has been one of the most underrated talents out there for years. I remember training with this kid and watching him, what he's been doing. Marche Rocket is a beast. But I will never let Marche chop me because I told Marche, if you chop me, I will shoot you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was like, bro, I love you to death. I love you, your wife, your kid. But you chop me, I'm shooting your tall ass in the knee. I swear for Jesus.
Most underrated wrestler for me, this rookie kid, Brock Lesnar. No, I'm joking. No, real talk though. Honestly, like, he's on the main roster, and he's somebody who I've just been watching for the past few years. Puts on amazing matches, and the dude, like, has no limits. Cesaro. Like, I feel Cesaro is a real good example of somebody who's an amazing wrestler who needs a good storyline. Like, the dude's amazing.
He needs to bring back the duster pants he used to wear. Bring back those.
Also, real quick, honorable mention, Chris Bay. I just had to get that out there.
Oh yeah. For me, it would be
Sasha Banks.
It would be Sasha Banks. Yes. No, there's this guy out of Dragon Gate. His name is Shun Skywalker. I think he's only been wrestling for like a year, maybe a year and a half, and he is something else. Shun Skywalker, Dragon Gate, and you guys should just watch Dragon Gate in general. Honestly. Any other questions?
Oh wait, before
Oh,
that, have an autograph and plus stickers. Autograph from Rosemary.
Wow. Look at that, Hunter.
Any more questions? Come on, y'all.
Anyone? I have one more autograph.
Oh, we have Macho Man and who else? Oh, Macho Man? You gotta cut it like Macho Man, huh? You gotta cut it. You thinking of a question. That's the point. That's the point. Where we want the wrong. We want the. There you go. Yes.
Cross-legged Macho Man.
It's already wrong.
How are you guys doing today?
5 stars.
Swerve.
All right, hold on. Okay, don't want to freak out. Okay. I had 2 questions, and then I got the mic, and I forgot what they were. Basically, God, what was it? I know one of them was, how crazy is it that probably, like, most of people in the room probably got into it in, like, the mid-'90s. I got into it in '98. But how crazy is it to go from, just it being a sport and kind of like butchy kind of, and then now it's at cons. Like, we have a panel about it. People have a panel about it at, it's now considered like excruciatingly geek culture. We should have a panel about that sometime soon.
It is crazy that people make a living off of talking about watching wrestling, right? Like that's legit. To me, that's insane. But to your point, I was telling John earlier, I was a kid. I was about 7 or 8 when I first stumbled upon wrestling. My best friend had wrestling buddies, and I saw Lex on the screen flexing. And I'm like, who is this guy? And he was like, oh, this is wrestling. And I would go over to watch it, and then it became an escape haven, do all other dramas and stuff, and it kind of kept me away from going down a bad road. So for wrestling now to be at cons and to be, from being in sneakers and movies and music and hip hop and everything else that I love, I can't turn around and not see wrestling in it. I think it's an incredible feeling, and I think that allows everybody from all walks of life to be able to relate to at least one thing in our life, and it comes down to wrestling.
I mean, I remember growing up like in the new generation era and being embarrassed to be a wrestling fan, even though I loved it. And then the Attitude Era came around and people were finally getting into it. And then, I'm pushing 40 now, and I'm wearing 90% of my wardrobe going to work are wrestling shirts. So basically 90% of my wardrobe is black, so.
I'm trying to turn
We
that tree.
appreciate
Turn
that.
that tree.
We appreciate
Color.
It is really comforting to know that like I can literally come to a con and talk about wrestling and wear my shirts out in public, not be embarrassed, and then go down like to Tennessee or New Orleans, and if I'm wearing a wrestling shirt, someone just randomly too-sweet me. I've literally had a sushi chef come out from behind the sushi bar to too-sweet me because I was wearing a wrestling shirt. Crazy. But that's just where we are now. Like you don't have to hide it. And just like with geek culture, I feel like if you're a comic book fan or if you like certain things, you hid that, but now you don't have to, and it's great.
I hate pro wrestling.
That's
No,
our
because
pan.
it's so crazy now. Like I don't hate it. I love it. It's just so surreal. Because when you've been a part of something, when it's part of your life now, like 20 years, you have lifelong friends who do it, and I see this, and it's like, oh man, y'all like dressing up like other people. Because it's fun though. Because to me, for me, I have my own gear, and that's the only reason for me it's different. Like I have my own gear, but I'm like, there go Kenny Omega. There go the Macho Man pre-ass whoopings he used to catch every Monday night on Raw. Because if you really remember WCW Monday Nitro, it was a segment that was on the run sheet that says Randy Savage gets his ass whooped. Like it never failed. It was religious every week.
Who was the agent on that one?
Because it was literally like Ted Turner was like, I like seeing that Macho Man get whooped. Get it again.
Nobody did it better.
But it's so beautiful to see it. It's beautiful to know that something I've bust my behind with, a lot of other people we bust our behind, men and women, who we've bled over this, we sweat over this, we literally cry over this because you give your all in trying to get a title shot and some people are like, well, it's just to work. Titles don't matter. It doesn't, the strap itself doesn't matter, but the fact a company will believe enough in you and to say, hey, you're our guy, you're our girl. That's what we bust our ass for. And to see people, basically showing homage to it, wearing the costumes, wearing the t-shirts, getting the belts, all that, it's kind of dope. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of dope. And people just saying, I want to make you on a creator. I've had several friends and fans make me as a creative wrestler, which I was like, don't do that, because I'm going to start crying. I'm a grown man. I'm a thug. I can't be out here shedding tears. You know what I'm saying? I don't want nobody to be like, yo, Jay a bitch. He was crying because people made a video.
Hey, it's 2019, okay? Men could cry. It's okay, man. It's all right.
Jay a bitch. He was out here crying.
I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Randy,
well,
Randy, come on
you
up.
had two, right?
I had one more. I remember it, but I'll
No.
give it away if somebody else has a question.
Oh, somebody else got a question, huh?
Anybody have a question?
The floor is yours, sir.
Over here on the right. No, okay. Over here on the left. Don't want to freak anybody out. The second question was, I remember it and hyping it up, but what is the most craziest, like, I can't buy that gimmick, but I'm still for the gimmick?
Bastion Booker.
Oh, I got a recent one, and it may be a hot take, but Private Party. Listen, yes, thank you. Now, if you watch us on Sundays, I call them the cul-de-sac party. I call them basically your gimmick should translate in ring. Like he said, it's about psychology, right? So you can't have this Private Party gimmick that sounds like a rip-off Little John song that you're coming down to, a crunk song, and then get to the ring and just start like has nothing to do with Private Party, has nothing to be an elitist or the you can't sit with us sort of thing. It's nothing like that. Their work is amazing, but it just doesn't translate to their gimmick. And then it doesn't, what are they talking about when they cut promos? Like, I watch their videos and promos. I think they're amazing. I just think they need to take away that Private Party gimmick and just be themselves. And if themselves is drinking, and they said like Hennessy or something, it was like, oh, we're drinking Hennessy.
You can't be that black and do that gimmick.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, come on.
You can't perpetuate
Come on.
type doing that gimmick.
Like, so again, I'm saying this, I think they're amazing in the ring. I just think they need to tighten up that gimmick, and because it doesn't equate to what they can do and what they can be. So watching that AEW match on Wednesday, which was awesome, but seeing them win, I was just like, well, okay, where is this going to go? Okay.
You know why?
Lucha Brothers.
No, you know why?
Why?
Because everybody knew the Young Bucks was going to put themselves over. That's the only reason Private Party. Because everybody in Mama was like, oh, it's the tag tournament with the Young Bucks? Let's see what happens in this match.
I would say my favorite gimmick right now is one I never thought would work, which is the Firefly Funhouse.
Like that, like seriously, that should be, in theory, the dumbest shit in the universe. Because the first time I ever saw it, I was like, God, this is the end of Bray. That's the first thing.
Right? You
Because
know who helped him with it?
no,
Taker.
are you serious?
Taker helped him with it.
Wow. So Firefly Funhouse, I mean, I sing that stupid song, and like the thing is, since it's so meta, because he's talking about Waylon Mercy and he's talking about all the other his own personas and making fun of Vince not liking him, so giving him money to shut him up. I mean, that's genius. That's a whole other. And Vince is probably not even getting it. Oh, well, he's getting me money, ha! But he doesn't get what's really going on. Husky the pig thing. I mean, it's absolute genius. Now, again, not talking about Hell in the Cell, but the trick.
Don't bring that up. Don't you do that.
I mean, minus the finish, the gimmick, minus the finish, the gimmick works for what they did.
Well,
I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so for me, it shouldn't work, but it absolutely does somehow.
I mean, guys,
God bless Bray.
we could sit here and talk about wrestling all night, but unfortunately, we cannot.
They're basically telling everybody to get out.
So they're telling us to get out. So, guys, thank you so much for coming to this panel.
Thank you, guys.
Make sure you go to thathashtagshow.com, facebook.com/THS Wrestling News. We got some stickers and stuff up here. Thanks again.
And remember, Sasha Banks is the greatest wrestler of all time. That is it. She's the greatest.
Randy, come up here and get your